And I'm not entirely sure that Anglo American is necessarily the main target that they want to go for. I think Anglo's is an easy target, although there are complexities. The board of Anglo has got to jettison its South African assets. BHP in South Africa, I think, don't get on that well. But of course, the big shareholder in Anglo is the Public Investment Corporation of South Africa, and I don't think they're going to be that keen to see BHP come in either. So I really wonder whether possibly the Chinese are quite likely to come in and make a counter bid, and China Inc. or some China state company would probably be quite welcome in South Africa. Although let's face it, all the valuable assets within Anglo American are outside South Africa these days. So it's quite a diversified group. But I do wonder whether BHP might turn its attention to Rio Tinto, perhaps, later on. We know that BHP and Rio Tinto have had discussions in the past. We know that those two companies would I think, be quite keen to get together. So I think there could be a lot at play here, much more at stake than just Anglo American.
Very interesting. So is this basically the start of what could be a lot of M&A activity in this sector? You highlighted a couple of possibilities there. Basically, is this the start of a new chapter as companies prepare a bit more for the energy transition?
Yeah, this is an opening shot. A lot of people in the industry, including myself, think that there's going to be a fairly severe shortage of copper coming at us. I think the Chinese state planners are still working out how to get enough copper to feed their electric vehicle industry, because electric cars use more than twice as much copper as a normal internal combustion engine vehicle. And given the number of cars being turned out by China these days, I just don't think they know where they're going to get all the copper from. And we know there's a shortage of supplies of copper concentrates. China in recent years has ramped up its copper smelting capacity, but they're now faced with having to close a couple of those smelters because they just can't get the concentrates to feed them. And if you can't get the concentrates, that means you can't produce the metal. And if you can't produce the metal, where are you going to get it from? So there's a lot to play for here, and I think the premium offered by BHP is a bit pathetic, and I think that's very much an opening shot. But I'm not convinced that Anglo is necessarily the big prize here.
John, it's very interesting your comments on China potentially looking at further options here. I was just wondering, what does that mean from a geopolitical point of view? Because the Europeans have said that they are actually quite concerned with the level of the access that Chinese companies have in terms of critical minerals. They want to actually change that. So do you think that there's room for Chinese players to actually make significant advancements here when you have European policymakers concerned about that?
Yes, there is. I mean, if you put BHP and Anglo together, you get they'll run about 10% of the copper market. China already runs more than that in terms of smelting capacity. So I mean, European policymakers have every right to be concerned, and the Americans as well. We know that China controls a lot of copper production in the Congo, in the DRC, and we know that there have been, shall we say, unconfirmed reports of problems with that, of uranium being shipped out with copper. We saw that last week, of problems to do with the DRC army, perhaps surrounding some of the mines. Again, unconfirmed reports in the Congo. So we think China is starting to have trouble in other parts of the world, and China is going to need to look for more secure sources of supply. Now, of course, the European Union is going to be pretty horrified at that because it looks like they're being squeezed out. But unfortunately, the EU doesn't seem to have the mechanisms in place to really compete with China at this point in time.
So, John, again, a lot of developments when it comes to Anglo American and BHP. Anglo American shares unanimously rejecting this offer, saying that basically it undervalues the company. I want to get a sense from you. What does this tell us about the outlook for copper? You mentioned a copper shortage on the horizon, but at the same time, copper is trading at an all-time high. It's risen about 19% over the last year. How much higher do you see copper going with so much interest in acquiring these copper assets?
Well, if we take something that Anglo American said recently, the incentive price to to start to develop new copper mines is much higher than where we are now. Yes, the copper price is about to break through $10,000 a ton, and that feels like a good thing. But in fact, you really need something between $12,000 and $15,000 a ton to persuade these big mining companies to start opening or to start to develop new mines. And there is a shortage of new mining projects to develop. And they run into problems. You've got First Quantum's Cobre Panama mine in Panama shut down because of concerns over very heavy rainfall and shenanigans with the government, and who knows what's really behind all that. So it's some of these mines are in pretty tricky parts of the world, and nobody's got anything new on the blocks in Chile or Peru of any significant scale. People need to go out there and find more of this stuff.